agreed it was for the best, my mother-in-law said, adjusting her church hat while checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. He was disrupting the vibe. Those were the words that ended my marriage. They had abandoned my 9-year-old son in a foreign country and flown home sipping champagne in first class, while he sat terrified in a holding cell. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply unlocked my phone and initiated the sequence that would leave them homeless, bankrupt, and facing federal charges before the sun went down. My name is Tasha, and if you have ever been the one holding the family together while they tear you down, you need to hear this story. Before I tell you how I turned their lives into ash, let me know where you are, watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that nobody messes with a mother's child. It was 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, and the air conditioning in my corner office on the 35th floor of the Sovereign Building in Buckhead was humming quietly, usually the sound of money and stability. I was finalizing the audit report for a Fortune 500 company, a job that paid me more in a month than my husband Marcus made in a year as a gym teacher, but nobody in his family knew that. To them, I was just Tasha, the accountant who got lucky marrying their golden boy Marcus. To his mother, Loretta, the First Lady of Greater Hope Baptist Church, I was the girl from the wrong side of Decatur who needed to be polished and grateful. I checked my watch. My in-laws' flight from Cancun was scheduled to land at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in 45 minutes. I had spent the last week working 18-hour days closing out tax season just so I could pay for this trip. It was supposed to be a $20,000 anniversary gift for my in-laws, but of course Marcus had told them he paid for it with a bonus he never received. I let him take the credit. I always let him take the credit because keeping his ego intact was easier than dealing with his mother's passive-aggressive comments about a woman's place. I had planned a welcome-home crab boil at Loretta's house. For tonight, I had ordered the premium seafood, arranged the catering, and even paid the landscaping crew to make sure her lawn was perfect for her arrival. I was the model daughter-in-law, financing a lifestyle they could not afford while they treated me like the help. Then my desk phone rang. It was not the internal line. It was an international number. Country code 5. To Mexico. I frowned, thinking it was perhaps a credit card fraud alert regarding the spending money I had given them. "This is Tasha," I answered, keeping my voice professional. "Mrs. Tasha Williams." The voice on the other end was clipped, formal, and American. "This is Vice Consul Sarah Jenkins from the U.S. Consulate General in Cancun, Mexico. I am calling regarding a minor U.S. citizen, Leo Williams." My heart stopped beating for a full second. The silence in my office was sudden and deafening. Yes, I am his mother. Is he hurt? Is he sick? My mind immediately flashed to asthma attacks or swimming pool accidents. He is physically unharmed, Mrs. Williams, but he is currently in our custody. Federal police found him sitting alone at Gate C4 at Cancun International Airport approximately 3 hours ago. He told officers his family boarded a flight to Atlanta and told him to wait there. I stood up so fast, my ergonomic chair slammed into the glass window behind me. The room spun. I gripped the edge of my mahogany desk, my knuckles turning white. "Excuse me," I whispered, my voice trembling with a rage I had never felt before. "Did you say they left him?" "Yes, ma'am. We have reviewed security footage. Your son was left at the gate, while 4 adults identified as Marcus Williams. Loretta Williams, Jamal Williams, and Tiffany Miller boarded Delta Flight 492 to Atlanta. The flight departed 4 hours ago. We have been trying to calm your son down, but he is extremely distressed. Put him on the phone," I demanded. My voice was no longer my own. It sounded like a stranger's, cold and deadly. There was a rustling sound and then a small hiccuping sob that shattered my soul. "Mommy, Leo, baby, I am here. I am right here. Listen to me carefully. You are safe. Mommy, they left me. Leo's voice was high and thin, tight with terror. Daddy said I had to wait for the next plane because I lost my ticket. But then they all got on and waved, and the plane left, and nobody came back. Auntie Tiffany said I was being too loud, and that I was a bad boy. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to vomit. Tiffany, my sister-in-law, the white woman who married my husband's brother Jamal, a man who hadn't held a steady job since 2015. Tiffany, who treated my son's ADHD like a personal insult, who looked at my black child with a mixture of fear and disgust whenever he acted like a normal 9-year-old boy. You are not a bad boy. Leo, listen to me. You are the smartest, bravest boy I know. I am coming to get you. I promise I am coming right. Now I stayed on the line for another 5 minutes soothing him until the vice consul came back on. I gave her my personal information and told her to keep him in the secure room. I hung up and looked at the family photo on my desk. Marcus smiling that charming smile that used to make my knees weak, holding Leo on his shoulders. It looked like a happy family. It was a lie. I did not call Marcus. I did not call Loretta. If I called them now while they were in the air, or just landing, they would have time to come up with a lie. They would have time to coordinate their story. I needed to see their faces when they walked out of that terminal without my son. I looked at the clock, 2:15 p.m. Their flight landed at 2:45 p.m. I had 30 minutes to get to the airport, but first I had to get my son. I picked up my office phone and dialed a number I had only used once before. It was the direct line to Robert Sterling, the managing partner of our firm, and my mentor, Tasha. Robert answered immediately. Why aren't you at the airport picking up the family? Robert, I am cashing in the chip, I said. My voice was steady, devoid of emotion. I need the Gulf Stream, and I need your contact for the private security team we used for the cartel audit in Mexico City last year. There was a pause. Robert knew me. He knew I was the best forensic accountant in the state, and that I never asked for favors. He heard the ice in my tone. What happened? They left Leo in Cancun. My in-laws abandoned my son at the airport and flew home. I need him extracted and brought to me immediately. Holy hell, Robert breathed. Consider it done. I will have the jet prepped at DeKalb Peachtree Airport. The security team in Cancun is already on retainer. I will have them at the consulate in 20 minutes to secure Leo. They will fly him home. Tasha, go handle your family. I have got the boy. Thank you, Robert. I hung up and grabbed my purse. I walked out of my office past the assistants who smiled and waved, past the junior associates who wanted to be me. I took the elevator down to the parking garage, my heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the concrete floor. I got into my car, a black Mercedes G-Wagon that I paid for, but Marcus drove on weekends to look important. I checked the flight tracker app. Delta Flight 492 had just touched down. They were taxiing to the gate. They were probably stretching their legs, complaining about the flight, food-checking their duty-free bags, making sure they hadn't left behind any of their precious souvenirs. They were laughing, thinking about the crab boil waiting for them, thinking about the lies they were going to tell me. They thought they had time. They thought they had power. They thought Tasha, the quiet accountant, who paid the bills and kept the peace, would just accept whatever excuse they cooked up. They had no idea that the woman driving toward them on I-85 wasn't Tasha the wife or Tasha the daughter-in-law anymore. I merged onto the highway, pressing the accelerator. The engine roared, responding to my anger. Wasn't going to the airport to pick up my family. I was going to the airport to meet my enemies. As I drove, I replayed the last week in my head. Marcus telling me not to worry about Leo, that he would handle the medication schedule. Loretta telling me I worked too much, and that this trip would be good for Leo to learn some family values. Tiffany making snide comments about how Leo's energy was overwhelming and how he needed discipline. It all made sense now. The hushed conversations I had walked in on before they left. The way Marcus wouldn't look me in the eye when he said goodbye. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a lost ticket. This was a plan. They decided my son was an inconvenience. They decided he didn't fit the aesthetic of their luxury vacation. And Marcus, my husband, the man who swore to protect our child, had gone along with it because he was too weak to stand up to his mother and his sister-in-law. I gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. I pulled into the International Terminal Arrivals Lane, ignoring the signs for short-term parking. I pulled right up to the curb where the limousines and private cars waited. I put the car in park and left the engine running. I checked my phone. A text from the security team in Mexico. Subject secured. We are with Leo. Transporting to private airfield now. Wheels up in 40 minutes. I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding. My baby was safe. Now it was time for the reckoning. I stepped out of the car, smoothing my blazer. I put on my sunglasses, even though it was overcast. I stood by the trunk, arms crossed, waiting. The automatic glass doors of the Hartsfield-Jackson International Terminal slid open with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a snake preparing to strike. I stood by the trunk of my SUV, my arms folded across my chest, watching the stream of travelers pour out into the humid Atlanta air. It did not take long to spot them. They were impossible to miss, a parade of arrogance and unearned luxury striding through the arrivals lane as if they owned the pavement beneath their feet. First came Loretta, my mother-in-law. She was wearing a flowing silk caftan that I knew for a fact cost $300 because the charge alert had pinged my phone 2 weeks ago. A wide-brimmed straw hat sat atop her head, shielding her eyes from the overcast sky, and she walked with the regal bearing of a woman who believed she was the queen of whatever room she entered. Her skin was glowing, a deep, rich bronze from the Mexican sun, a stark contrast to the pale, exhausted reflection I had seen in my rearview mirror moments ago. Behind her trailed Marcus, my husband. He was pushing a luggage cart stacked so high with suitcases it looked dangerous. I spotted the Louis Vuitton duffel bag I had bought him for his birthday perched precariously on top, right next to several bright yellow duty-free shopping bags. He looked relaxed, his posture loose, a man without a care in the world. He was laughing at something his brother Jamal said, flashing that charming, boyish smile that had once made me fall in love with him. Seeing it now made my stomach turn. Bringing up the rear were Jamal and his wife, Tiffany. They were holding hands, swinging their arms like teenagers on a first date. Tiffany was wearing a new pair of Gucci sunglasses, the oversized frames covering half her face, and carrying a matching tote bag that definitely wasn't in her possession before they left. Jamal looked smug, a half-smoked cigar tucked behind his ear, looking every bit the successful entrepreneur he pretended to be, rather than the man who had borrowed $5,000 from me last month to pay off a gambling debt. They looked perfect. They looked like a poster family for Black excellence and generational wealth. They looked like they had just returned from the trip of a lifetime, refreshed, bonded, and happy. And they looked completely unbothered by the fact that they were one person short. I watched them scan the line of cars. When their eyes landed on me, the reaction was immediate and sickeningly performative. Loretta threw her hands up in the air, a theatrical gesture of delight. "Tasha, baby," she called out, her voice booming over the noise of idling engines and shuttle buses. "We are home. Oh, you are such a blessing for picking us up." The traffic was a nightmare just getting out of the terminal. Marcus saw me and picked up his pace, abandoning the cart for Jamal to push as he jogged toward me. He opened his arms wide, expecting the usual welcome, the dutiful wife happy to see her man return. "Hey, babe," he said, leaning in to kiss me. "I missed you so much. You should have seen the villa. It was incredible." I didn't move. I didn't open my arms. I didn't smile. I simply took a half step back, causing him to stumble slightly as he leaned into empty space. His lips met the humid air instead of my cheek. He pulled back, a flicker of confusion crossing his face, but he quickly masked it with a nervous chuckle. "Wow, tough crowd," he joked, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away before he could make contact. I looked at him, then at Loretta, who had just reached us, then at Jamal and Tiffany, who were leisurely strolling up as if I were their hired chauffeur. I looked past them, scanning the automatic doors one last time, even though I knew exactly where my son was. "Where is Leo?" I asked. My voice was low, flat, devoid of any warmth. The air around us seemed to freeze, the smiles faltered. For a split second, the mask slipped. Marcus glanced at Loretta. Tiffany looked down at her new shoes. Jamal suddenly became very interested in the label on his cigar. It was a micro moment of collective guilt, a silent communication between conspirators who had rehearsed their lines but hadn't expected to deliver them so soon. Marcus cleared his throat, adjusting the collar of his polo shirt. "Oh, right. Leo." He laughed, a dry, brittle sound that grated on my nerves. "Babe, you know how he is. He was having such a great time, really getting into the culture. We had a family meeting at the airport this morning." "A family meeting," I repeated. "A meeting I wasn't part of. About my son." Loretta stepped in, placing a manicured hand on Marcus's arm, effectively silencing him. She took over the narrative with the smooth confidence of a woman who had spent decades spinning stories from the church pulpit. "Now, Tasha, don't get upset," Loretta said, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness. "You know that boy needs a firm hand. He was acting out terribly at the resort, running around, making noise, disturbing the other guests. It was embarrassing, quite frankly. We decided he needed a little time to cool off, some discipline to help him appreciate what he has." "Where is he?" I asked again, louder this time. "He is safe," Marcus said quickly, holding up his hands as if to ward off a physical blow. "He is with Dia Maria. You know, my mom's cousin in Mexico City. She came down to Cancun to see us off, and she offered to take him for a week." "Yes," Loretta chimed in, nodding vigorously. "Maria is such a saint. She has a ranch out in the country. We thought a week of fresh air, chores, and Spanish lessons would do Leo a world of good. He needs to learn that vacations are a privilege, not a right. He was just ruining the vibe for everyone, Tasha. You baby him too much." Tiffany let out a loud, dramatic sigh, pushing her sunglasses up into her hair. "God, yes. It was a nightmare, Tasha. Honestly, I don't know how you deal with him every day. He was screaming at the gate, throwing a tantrum because he lost his switch. It was humiliating. We had to make an executive decision for the sake of the family's mental health. I needed a break. My nerves are shot." I looked at them. I looked at their tanned faces, their designer clothes, their utter lack of shame. They stood there, united in their lie, confident that I would just accept it because I was Tasha the doormat. Tasha the fixer. Tasha who never rocked the boat. They told me my 9-year-old son, a boy with ADHD who needed routine and medication, was on a ranch with Dia Maria. There was just one problem, a problem so massive, so glaring, that it took every ounce of my self-control not to scream it in their faces, right there on the curbside. Dia Maria was dead. She had died 2 years ago. I knew this because I had paid for her casket. I had paid for the flower arrangements. I had sat in the second row at her funeral and held Loretta's hand while she wept fake tears for a cousin she hadn't spoken to in a decade. They had forgotten. In their arrogance, in their haste to get rid of my son so they could enjoy their luxury vacation undisturbed, they had concocted a lie using a dead woman as the babysitter. They hadn't just abandoned my son, they had erased him from their reality so completely that they didn't even bother to come up with a plausible cover story. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, turning my heart into a block of ice. This wasn't just negligence, this was malice. This was a level of cruelty I hadn't thought possible, even from them. They had left a scared little boy alone in a foreign airport, flown thousands of miles away, and were now standing here lying to his mother's face without a shred of remorse. I looked at Marcus, my husband, the father of my child. He was sweating now, shifting his weight from foot to foot, avoiding my gaze. He knew. Deep down, he knew this was wrong, but he was too weak, too cowardly to stand up to the three women who ran his life, his mother, his sister-in-law, and his own selfishness. "So, he is with Maria," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "And she is going to bring him back next week." "Exactly," Loretta said, beaming, clearly relieved that I was buying the story. "She will put him on a plane next Sunday. We already gave her the money for the ticket. It is all handled, Tasha. You really need to learn to trust us. We are family. We know what is best for that boy." "Right," I said. "Family." I reached into my pocket and touched my phone. The recording app was still running. I had everything. The confession, the lie, the justification. They had dug their own graves with their mouths, and they didn't even know the dirt was already falling on top of them. My phone buzzed against my palm, a text notification. I glanced down discreetly. It was from the head of the security team I had hired. "Target secure. Wheels up. The boy is eating pizza and watching cartoons. ETA Atlanta 2 hours." A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful it nearly made my knees buckle. Leo was safe. He was in the air, on a private Gulfstream jet that cost more per hour than Jamal made in a year, surrounded by former Navy SEALs who would treat him with more kindness in 2 hours than his own blood relatives had in his entire life. I looked back up at them. They were waiting for me to unlock the car, to load their bags, to drive them to the party I had planned. They were waiting for the service to continue. Tiffany tapped her foot impatiently. "Can we go, Tasha? It is hot out here, and I am starving. I hope you bought that wine I like. The red one, not the cheap stuff you usually get." I forced the corners of my mouth up into a smile. It felt like stretching rubber over a skull, a cold, lifeless expression that didn't reach my eyes. "Oh, don't worry, Tiffany," I said. "I bought everything. I prepared a whole welcome home feast. A crab boil, with the king crab legs you love, and the expensive wine. It is all waiting at the house." Loretta clapped her hands together. "See? I told you she would take care of us. Tasha is a good girl. Come on, Marcus, load the bags. My feet are killing me." I unlocked the doors. Marcus and Jamal began heaving the heavy suitcases into the trunk of my SUV. I watched them struggle with the weight of their own greed, the souvenirs and luxury goods bought with my money, while my son's seat in the back remained empty. "You guys hop in," I said, walking around to the driver's side. "We have a lot to celebrate." "Celebrate?" Marcus asked, pausing with a bag in his hand. "Sure," I said, opening my door and looking him dead in the eye. "The family is back together." "Almost." He hesitated, a shadow of unease crossing his face, but Loretta was already in the passenger seat, adjusting the air conditioning vents and complaining about the heat. The pressure to conform, to keep the peace, to do what Mommy wanted, overrode whatever conscience he had left. He slammed the trunk and got into the back seat next to Tiffany and Jamal. I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. The dashboard lit up, the navigation system plotting the route to Loretta's house in Cascade Heights. 40 minutes. That was how long it would take. 40 minutes of listening to them brag about their trip. 40 minutes of biting my tongue. "So, tell me," Loretta said as I pulled away from the curb, merging into the chaotic airport traffic. "Did you miss us?" I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. "You have no idea, Loretta," I said, my voice smooth and deadly. "I have been counting down the minutes until you got back. I have a surprise for you. A big one." "Oh, I love surprises," Tiffany squealed from the back seat. "Is it a gift?" "You could say that," I replied, checking the rearview mirror. I caught Marcus's eye. He looked pale, sweating despite the blasting AC. He knew something was off. He knew me better than the rest of them, and he could sense the vibration of my rage humming just beneath the surface. I merged onto the highway, pressing the accelerator. The city skyline rose up before us, indifferent and gray. "Just wait," I thought. "Just wait until we get to the house. You want a crab boil? You want a party? I am going to give you a show you will never forget." "So tell me more about Dia Maria," I asked casually, keeping my eyes on the road. How is she doing? She must be getting old by now. Oh, she looks fantastic, Loretta lied without missing a beat. Spry as a chicken. She has a new garden she wanted to show off. She asked about you, Tasha, said she prays for you. I smiled, a sharp, razor-edged thing. That is so sweet of her, I said. I will have to send her a thank you note for taking such good care of my son. I turned up the radio to drown out their chatter, the bass thumping in time with the pounding of my heart. The trap was set, the players were in position, and I was driving the hearse. I turned the car onto Cascade Road. The houses here were large brick estates set back from the street on rolling green lawns. It was the neighborhood of doctors, lawyers, and civil rights leaders, the neighborhood Loretta had always wanted to live in. We pulled up to the driveway of the house. It was a stately two-story colonial with white pillars and a manicured garden filled with azaleas and hydrangeas. It was the family home, the seat of the Williams legacy. Except it wasn't. I bought this house too. 5 years ago when Marcus's father died and left Loretta with nothing but debt. I stepped in. I paid off the liens, I bought the deed, and I let Loretta stay there pretending it was still hers because I didn't want my husband to be embarrassed, that his mother was broke. I paid the gardener who mowed the lawn. I paid the housekeeper who dusted the furniture. I paid for the new roof, the HVAC system, the repaved driveway. Every single brick of this lie was cemented with my money. I put the car in park, and turned off the engine. The silence that filled the cabin was heavy and suffocating. Well, we are here, Loretta announced, clapping her hands together, unbuckling her seatbelt. Thank the Lord for safe travels. Now, Tasha. I hope you didn't skimp on the crab. I have been dreaming of garlic butter since we took off. We all got out of the car. The humidity of the Georgia afternoon hit us instantly, wrapping around us like a wet blanket. Marcus opened the trunk and began unloading the bags again, playing the role of the dutiful son, while his wife plotted his destruction. I walked up the front steps, my heels clicking on the stone path. I unlocked the front door, the heavy oak swinging open to reveal the cool, air-conditioned foyer. It smelled of lemon polish and expensive potpourri, the scent of a home that was cared for by someone else's money. Come on in, everyone, I said, stepping aside to let them pass. Go on into the dining room. I will get the drinks started. They filed in, chatting happily, completely oblivious. Tiffany kicked off her shoes at the door, leaving them in the middle of the hallway for someone else to pick up. Jamal headed straight for the living room, turning on the massive flat-screen TV I had bought for the Super Bowl party last year. Loretta marched into the dining room like a general inspecting her troops. "Oh, look at this," she cooed, her voice carried out to the hallway. The table was set beautifully. I had arranged it that morning before the call from the consulate. Crystal glasses, gleaming silverware polished to a shine, oversized bibs with crabs printed on them, folded neatly at each setting. In the center of the table was a massive steaming pot. I had kept warm on the buffet server, filled with king crab legs, shrimp corn, potatoes and sausage. It was a feast fit for royalty, a feast for the people who had thrown my son away, like garbage. I walked into the kitchen. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, checking the tracking app again. Leo was over the Gulf of Mexico, less than an hour away. The security team had sent a photo of him sleeping, curled up in a leather seat covered in a blanket. He was safe. He was coming home. And now I was going to burn their world down. I tapped the screen of my phone, opening the voice memo app. I checked the volume, making sure it was all the way up. Then I slid the phone into the front pocket of my blazer, the microphone facing out. I took a deep breath, smoothing the front of my jacket. I looked at my reflection in the microwave door. My eyes were hard, dark stones. My mouth was a thin line. There was no warmth left in me, no forgiveness, no mercy. I walked into the dining room. They were already seated, taking their places at the table as if they deserved to be there. Loretta was at the head of the table. Naturally. Marcus was to her right, Jamal and Tiffany to her left. They looked up as I entered, smiles on their faces, anticipation for the food shining in their eyes. Tasha, honey, sit down, Loretta said, gesturing to the empty chair at the foot of the table. The help's chair. Grab a bib. Let's pray and eat. This looks magnificent. I didn't sit. I stood at the end of the table, gripping the back of the chair. My knuckles turned white. Before we eat, I said, my voice steady and loud, cutting through their chatter. I just want to clarify one thing. They looked at me confused by my tone. Marcus stopped reaching for the wine bottle. Tiffany paused mid-selfie. What is it, babe? Marcus asked, looking nervous. I want to hear it one more time, I said, looking from face to face, making eye contact with each of them. I want you to tell me exactly why you left Leo in Mexico. Tiffany groaned, rolling her eyes. Oh my God, Tasha, are we still on this? I told you. He was negatively impacting my mental health. I needed space to heal. It was a boundary. Okay, I set a boundary. A boundary, I repeated, nodding slowly. And you, Loretta, you agreed with this. Loretta straightened her spine, looking affronted. Well, yes, it takes a village. Tasha, and sometimes, the village has to make hard choices for the good of the child. He was out of control. He needed discipline. Dia Maria will straighten him out. It is just for a week. Don't be so dramatic. And you, Marcus? I turned my gaze to my husband, the man who had vowed to love and cherish me, the man whose son was his spitting image. Marcus looked down at his plate, picking at a loose thread on the tablecloth. Look, Tash, he mumbled. Mom and Tiffany were really stressed. You weren't there. You didn't see how bad he was. It was easier this way. We figured he would be fine. He's a tough kid. Easier, I said softly. The word hung in the air, heavy and damning. It was easier to leave a 9-year-old boy in a foreign airport than to parent him. It was easier to abandon him than to inconvenience Tiffany. Thank you, I said, sliding my hand into my pocket and tapping the stop button on the recording. I just wanted to make sure I had that clear. Now I smiled, and it was the coldest thing in the room, colder than the ice in the wine bucket. Enjoy the food, I said, because it is the last meal you will ever eat in this house. The sound of laughter from the dining room followed us like a taunt as I grabbed Marcus by the bicep and dragged him into the kitchen. The granite countertops I had paid for gleamed under the recessed lighting, cold and hard, just like the pit forming in my stomach. I let go of his arm, and he stumbled back against the stainless steel refrigerator, looking like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar, but without the innocence. Marcus smoothed his shirt, trying to regain some semblance of the man of the house, persona he liked to wear when his mother was watching. But we were alone now, the mask was slipping. I gave you an out, Marcus, I said, my voice low and vibrating with the effort to keep from screaming. I gave you a chance in the car to tell me you were forced into this. To tell me your mother and Tiffany overruled you. To tell me you fought for our son. Marcus looked down at his Gucci loafers shoes that cost more than his monthly car payment shoes that I had bought him for our anniversary. He refused to meet my eyes. It is not like that, Tasha, he mumbled, shifting his weight. You are making a big deal out of nothing. Leo is fine. He is tough. He is a Williams. He is 9 years old. I snapped, stepping closer to him. He is a little boy with asthma and ADHD, and you left him in a foreign country where he does not speak the language. Look at me, Marcus. Look at me and tell me why. He finally looked up, and what I saw in his eyes made my blood run cold. It wasn't regret, it wasn't sorrow, it was resentment. A deep, simmering resentment that I realized with a shock had been there for a long time, hidden behind his easy smiles and passive nature. You want to know why, he said, his voice gaining a sudden petulant strength? Because he is too much, Tasha. He is always correcting me, always talking back, always acting like he knows everything, Just because he goes to that private school and reads those big books, he thinks he is better than me. He thinks he is the man of the house. I stared at him, my mouth falling open slightly. You are jealous, I whispered. You are jealous of your own son. Marcus's face twisted into a sneer. He is arrogant just like you. He thinks because you pay the bills and he gets good grades. That I do not matter. Mom saw it too. She said he was getting too big for his britches. She said he needed to be taken down a peg or two to learn who is really in charge. My heart, which had been breaking for hours, finally shattered. But it wasn't a loud break. It was a quiet final snap, like a dry twig in winter. The love I had held for this man for 10 years, the respect I had tried to maintain, despite his financial dependence and his lack of ambition, evaporated in a single heartbeat. You left him there to punish him for being smart. I asked, my voice devoid of emotion, now just a cold, hollow echo. You endangered his life because he makes you feel insecure. He needs to learn respect. Marcus spat out, puffing out his chest. Mom said it was the only way a few days with Maria would teach him gratitude. He would come back humble. He would realize he needs us. Maria is dead. Marcus, I said again, watching his face. I told you in the car. She has been dead for 2 years. He waved his hand dismissively, refusing to accept the reality that interfered with his mother's plan. Mom said she arranged it. I trust my mother. Tasha. She knows what is best for this family. Unlike you always throwing money at problems and making Leo soft. He needed this. I looked at the man standing in my kitchen drinking my wine wearing clothes I bought standing in a house I owned, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. He wasn't just weak. He wasn't just a mama's boy. He was malicious. He was willing to traumatize a child, his own flesh and blood, to soothe his fragile ego. He would rather see his son broken and scared than confident and intelligent, because a smart child reminded him of his own mediocrity. The silence stretched between us, heavy and toxic. I looked at the wedding ring on his finger, a platinum band I had upgraded for him last year, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no nostalgia, just a cold, clinical clarity. This was not a marriage. This was a hostage situation, and I had been paying the ransom for a decade. Suddenly my phone buzzed against my chest. It was a single sharp vibration that cut through the tension. I reached into my pocket and pulled it out, keeping the screen angled away from him. It was a text message from the security team lead. Package secured. The boy is safe on board. We are taxiing now. He is eating pizza and asking for you. ETA, Atlanta, 90 minutes. I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding the knot of terror that had been tightening in my chest since 2 p.m. Uncoiled. My son was safe. He was coming home. He was out of their reach. I locked my phone and slid it back into my pocket. Then I looked at Marcus one last time. He was watching me, expecting me to argue, expecting me to cry, expecting me to beg him to see reason. He thought this was a negotiation. He thought we would go in there, eat crab legs, and eventually I would get over it, just like I got over the gambling debts and the failed business ideas and the constant disrespect from his mother. He had no idea that he was already a ghost. Okay, Marcus, I said, my voice soft, almost gentle. He blinked, surprised by my capitulation. You see, you understand, right? We just want him to be a good man, Tasha. Like me. I nodded slowly, feeling a dark amusement curl in my gut. Yes, Marcus, I understand perfectly. I understand everything now. I turned away from him and walked to the sink. I washed my hands, the cool water grounding me. I dried them on a paper towel, staring out the window at the dark backyard where the pool lights were glowing blue, the pool Leo loved. The pool Marcus never cleaned. Come on, Marcus said, his confidence returning now that he thought he had won. Mom is waiting for the butter sauce. She hates it when the food gets cold. I turned around and smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach my eyes, a smile that belonged to a predator who had just cornered its prey. "Let's go." Then, I said I wouldn't want to keep Loretta waiting. I walked past him out of the kitchen and back toward the dining room. The sound of silverware clinking on china and the murmur of contented voices grew louder. I paused in the hallway just out of sight. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the expensive seafood and the old house smell that no amount of renovation could fully cover. Leo was safe. The fear was gone. Now there was only room for the execution. I reached into my pocket and touched my phone one more time, just to feel the cool metal reassurance. Then I smoothed my blazer, lifted my chin, and walked into the dining room. The smile on my face vanished instantly, replaced by a mask of stone. It was time to turn off the lights on the Williams family show. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, standing up from the table, pushing my chair back with a deliberate scrape against the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the noise of cracking crab legs and slurping butter. Loretta looked up, butter glistening on her chin, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Everything all right, Tasha?" she asked, her voice thick with false concern. "You have barely touched your food." "I am fine, Loretta," I said, smoothing my blazer. "I just need to use the restroom. Do not wait for me." I walked out of the dining room, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the floorboards that I paid for. I could feel their eyes on my back, could feel the relief washing over them as I left the room. They thought I was retreating. They thought I was going to cry or splash water on my face and come back composed, ready to serve them again. They were wrong. I walked down the hallway past the family photos that were lies frozen in frames and turned into the powder room beneath the stairs. I locked the door behind me. The click of the deadbolt was the most satisfying sound I had heard all day. I did not look in the mirror. I did not need to see the rage in my own eyes. I sat on the closed lid of the toilet and reached into my oversized tote bag, pulling out my laptop. It was a sleek matte black machine issued by my firm, loaded with forensic accounting software that could trace a single dollar through a dozen shell companies across 3 continents. I opened it, the screen glowing blue in the dim light, connecting instantly to the encrypted mobile hotspot on my phone. I was not using Loretta's Wi-Fi. I did not want to leave a digital footprint on her network. Not yet. I cracked my knuckles and began to type. For 10 years I had been the dutiful daughter-in-law managing their finances because they were too incompetent to do it themselves. I filed their taxes, I balanced their checkbooks, I managed the church's books because Loretta begged me to use my gift for the Lord. It meant I had every password, every account number, every social security number memorized. I logged into the main portal. First up was the Greater Hope Baptist Church Discretionary Fund. As the treasurer, Loretta had signatory power, but I had oversight access. I pulled up the transaction history for the last 10 days. My eyes scanned the lines of data looking for anomalies. It did not take long. There it was. A withdrawal made 5 days ago. Wire transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands, and then immediately bounced back to a debit card registered in Mexico. $50,000. The memo line read, "Emergency building maintenance roof repair." I nearly laughed in the quiet bathroom. The church roof had been replaced last year. I knew, because I audited the contractor, Loretta had stolen $50,000 from the congregation, from the tithes of grandmothers and families struggling to get by to fund her shopping spree. I opened a second window tracing the spending on that debit card in Mexico. It was a roadmap of narcissism. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, a jewelry store in Cancun called Diamantes de Lujo, where she dropped $12,000 in a single transaction. She stole from God to buy diamonds. I took a screenshot, saving it to a secure cloud folder labeled Evidence Next. I opened my own American Express business portal. This was the account I had added Jamal and Tiffany to strictly for emergencies like a flat tire or a hospital visit. I clicked on pending transactions, and the breath left my lungs in a sharp hiss. Yesterday morning at Cancun International Airport, a charge for $15,000 to Delta Airlines. I clicked on the transaction details, expanding the receipt. 4 tickets. Upgrade to Delta 1. First class passengers listed: Marcus Williams, Loretta Williams, Jamal Williams, Tiffany Miller. And right below it, a credit, a refund of $400. Cancellation fee applied. Passenger Leo Williams. Ticket, status, void. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring not with tears, but with a red-hot fury that felt like lava in my veins. They did not just leave him, they cashed him in. They used my credit card, my hard-earned money, to upgrade themselves to lie-flat seats and warm nuts and bottomless champagne while they canceled my son's ticket. They literally traded his safety for legroom. They sat in first class, eating gourmet meals paid for by me, while my 9-year-old son with ADHD sat alone at a gate, clutching his backpack, waiting for parents who were 30,000 feet above him, toasting to their freedom. And Marcus, my husband, had sat there with them. He had stretched out his legs, accepted the hot towel, and let them erase his son from the manifest. I looked at the timestamp on the upgrade. It was processed 45 minutes before their flight departed. That was the family meeting they talked about. That was the executive decision Tiffany mentioned. It was not about discipline. It was not about mental health. It was about greed. It was about comfort. It was about the fact that they are monsters wrapped in designer clothes. I felt a vibration in my pocket. My phone. My security team lead texting me. Touchdown in Atlanta. We are taxiing to the private hangar. Leo is asking if you have his Lego set. I typed back. Tell him I have it. Tell him. Mommy is almost done working. I put the phone down and looked back at the laptop screen. The evidence was staring back at me, indisputable and damning. Embezzlement, wire fraud, credit card fraud, child endangerment, child abandonment. I had enough to put them away for 20 years. I navigated to the FBI's financial crimes reporting portal. I had a direct login thanks to my work with federal prosecutors. I filled out the forms, my fingers flying across the keys, typing with a precision born of absolute hatred. Suspect Loretta Williams. Offense: embezzlement of charitable funds. Amount $50,000. Evidence attached. Suspects: Jamal Williams, Tiffany Miller, Marcus Williams. Offense: credit card fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Amount $15,000. Evidence attached. I hesitated for a fraction of a second over Marcus's name. This was the man I had vowed to spend my life with, the man I had built a home with. But then I remembered the refund credit, the $400 he deemed his son was worth. I typed his name into the suspect field. Then I opened a new tab for Chase Bank. I logged into the admin panel for my business accounts. I selected the cards issued to Jamal and Tiffany status active. I moved the cursor to the suspend button. No, that was not enough. I moved it to report lost stolen. If I reported them lost, the cards would just be declined. If I reported them stolen, it triggered a fraud alert. It meant that any attempted use would flag the merchant to call the police. It meant that the $15,000 charge for the flights would be contested and Delta would come looking for their money. I clicked Report Stolen. Then I went to the car leasing portal. The Mercedes G-Wagon. Marcus loved so much. The one sitting in the driveway right now was a company lease under my firm's name. I clicked on the remote management tools. Locate vehicle, found 1240 Cascade Road. Status engine, off doors locked. I clicked the button labeled Immobilize Engine. A dialog box popped up asking for confirmation. This will prevent the vehicle from starting until a master code is entered. Are you sure? I clicked. Yes. Finally, I went back to the FBI portal. The forms were ready, the evidence files were uploaded, the bank records, the flight manifests, the surveillance photos from the security team in Mexico that showed them walking away from Leo at the gate. My mouse hovered over the submit button. I could hear them outside the bathroom door, the muffled sounds of laughter. Loretta's booming voice telling a story about how the resort staff waited on her hand and foot. Jamal bragging about the cigars he smoked. Tiffany complaining about the humidity. They were eating my food, drinking my wine, sitting in my house celebrating their crime. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought Tasha would handle it. Tasha would fix it. Tasha would forgive. Tasha was dead. I pressed the button. The screen refreshed. Report, submitted reference number 8944, Bravo Zulu. A federal agent will review this case immediately. I closed the laptop with a snap. I stood up and looked in the mirror. I adjusted my blouse, fixed my hair. I looked calm. I looked professional. I looked like the person who cleans up the mess. But inside, I was the storm. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped out into the hallway. The air smelled of seafood and expensive perfume. I walked toward the dining room, the sound of my heels echoing like gunshots. It was time to tell them the news. It was time to watch them choke on their crab legs. The air in the dining room was thick with the scent of garlic butter and Old Bay seasoning, a smell that usually signaled celebration and family unity, but tonight smelled like betrayal. I sat at the end of the table watching them eat. The initial tension from my earlier outburst had dissipated, replaced by the gluttonous rhythm of cracking shells and slurping meat. They were devouring the meal I paid for, washing it down with the expensive Sancerre. I had chilled for them, acting as if the earlier confrontation was just a hiccup in their otherwise perfect evening. They thought the storm had passed. They thought Tasha had vented, and now Tasha would go back to being the bankroll. They had no idea the hurricane was just making landfall. Tiffany sat to my left, picking at a king crab leg with her manicured fingers, grease staining her chin. She held her empty wine glass up to the light, swirling the last few drops with a look of distaste on her face. "This wine is okay," she announced, her voice loud, enough to carry over the sound of Jamal chewing. "But honestly, Tasha, for a welcome home dinner, I expected something with a little more body. This tastes like something you picked up at a gas station on the way here." I stared at her. The bottle was $60. It was from a vineyard in the Loire Valley. But to Tiffany, if it did not have a recognizable logo or a price tag she could brag about, it was trash. "I am sorry. It is not up to your standards, Tiffany," I said, my voice smooth and calm. "I just grabbed what I thought everyone would like." "Well, we are out anyway," she sighed, dropping the glass onto the table with a heavy thud. "And I need a drink. My nerves are still shot from the flight and the trauma of dealing with Leo's meltdown. I'm going to order something decent." She pulled out her iPhone, the latest model that I had paid off for her last Christmas, and opened a delivery app. I watched her long acrylic nails tap against the screen, scrolling through the premium wine list. "Ooh, here we go. A nice Cabernet from Napa. $200 a bottle. That should help me relax. Jamal, baby, do you want some whiskey? They have that Japanese stuff you like? Order 2 bottles." Jamal grunted his mouth full. "And get the big bottle of Hibiki." Tiffany tapped the screen, adding items to her cart, with the reckless abandon of someone who has never had to pay a bill in her life. She hit the checkout button, her face illuminated by the blue light of the screen, a smirk playing on her lips. "Done," she announced, tossing the phone onto the table. "It will be here in 20 minutes. See, Tasha, sometimes you just have to take charge to get what you want." I took a sip of my water, watching the condensation slide down the glass. "Yes," I said quietly. "Sometimes you do." The next 20 minutes were an exercise in patience. Loretta launched into a story about a woman at the resort who had the audacity to wear the same swimsuit as her painting herself as the victim of a fashion crime. Marcus laughed at all the right moments, trying to catch my eye, trying to pull me back into the fold. I ignored him, focusing on the front door, waiting. When the doorbell finally rang, it sounded like a gavel striking a judge's bench. "I will get it," Tiffany announced, jumping up from her chair. She smoothed her dress and fluffed her hair, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. I knew why she was eager. The delivery apps usually sent young guys, and Tiffany loved an audience. She loved to play the rich housewife, greeting the help. I stood up and followed her. staying a few paces back, leaning against the archway that separated the dining room from the foyer. The delivery driver was exactly what she had hoped for. Tall, young, handsome, with broad shoulders and a winning smile. He held a brown paper bag cradled in his arm. "Delivery for Tiffany," he said, his smile bright. "That is me." Tiffany purred, stepping onto the porch, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "You made good time. Just doing my job, ma'am." He held out a handheld payment terminal. "I just need to scan the ID and process the payment." The app said it is a high-value order, so we have to dip the card in person. Of course, Tiffany reached into her purse and pulled out the sleek platinum credit card, the heavy metal card that made a satisfying clatter when she dropped it on tables. The card that had my name on the account and her name embossed below it as an authorized user. She handed it to the driver with a flourish, barely looking at him, focused instead on the bag of liquor. He inserted the chip into the reader. The machine beeped once. A processing wheel spun on the small screen. Tiffany tapped her foot, humming a little tune, waiting for the approval sound, waiting for her prize. The machine let out a harsh buzzing noise. A red light flashed on the top. "Decline," the driver said, frowning. He pulled the card out and wiped the chip on his shirt. "Maybe it is just a bad read. Let me try again." Tiffany laughed, a nervous titter that sounded like breaking glass. "Do not be silly, that card has a $50,000 limit. Try it again. Your machine is probably broken." He inserted it again, deeper this time, pushing it firmly into the slot. Processing, buzz red light, it says. "Declined. Do not honor," the driver said, looking up, his smile fading slightly. He looked at the screen again. It actually says, "Pick up card. Call bank." Tiffany snatched the card from his hand, her face flushing a deep, angry red. "Give me that. It is not declined. I just used it yesterday in Mexico. There is plenty of money on it. You do not know what you are doing." She turned to me, seeing me standing in the archway. "Tasha, tell him. Tell him this card is good." I walked forward slowly, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I stopped in the doorway, standing right next to Tiffany. "What seems to be the problem?" I asked, my voice dripping with false concern. "This idiot says the card is declined," Tiffany snapped. She shoved the card back at the driver. "Run it again, and this time make it work, or I am calling your manager and getting you fired." The driver looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between us. "Ma'am, I can run it again, but the code is specific. It is a fraud alert." "Fraud," Tiffany shrieked. "Do I look like a fraudster? This is my card. My name is right there." "Look." She pointed a manicured finger at the embossed letters. I stepped out onto the porch into the humid evening air. "Is the card broken, sister-in-law?" I asked, tilting my head. Tiffany whirled on me, venom in her eyes. "It is not broken, Tasha. You probably forgot to pay the bill or something. You know how scatterbrained you get when you are stressed. Fix it." I looked at the driver. He was holding the bag of wine and whiskey worth nearly $500, uncertain of what to do. "It is not the bill." "Tiffany," I said, my voice dropping an octave, losing the feigned sweetness. "It is the card." "What are you talking about?" she demanded. I looked at the platinum rectangle in her hand, the symbol of the lifestyle she felt entitled to. "That is my card," I said. "It is my account. You are just an authorized user, and authorized users only have privileges when the account holder allows it." I pulled my phone out of my pocket and held up the screen, showing the banking app notification I had received 20 minutes ago. Card ending in 4092, reported, lost stolen account, frozen. I reported it stolen, I said, staring her dead in the eye. "About 30 minutes ago, right after you told me how you used it to upgrade your flight while leaving my son behind." Tiffany froze. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and old beneath her tan. "You what?" she whispered. I reported it stolen. I repeated louder this time so the driver could hear, so Loretta and Marcus in the dining room could hear. I told the bank that a thief had misappropriated my card and was making unauthorized purchases. Which is true, isn't it? You are spending money that isn't yours to celebrate a crime you committed. Tiffany looked at the card in her hand, then at me, her eyes wide with shock and humiliation. You can't do that, she stammered. This is my card. It has my name on it. It has my credit score behind it. I snapped. And as of right now, it is a piece of plastic. I turned to the driver who was watching the scene with wide eyes. I am sorry, sir. I said, my voice professional and calm. I cannot authorize this transaction. The card has been canceled due to theft. You will have to take the merchandise back. The driver nodded quickly, relieved to have an out. He pulled the card out of the machine and handed it back to Tiffany, then took a step back, clutching the bag tight. No, wait. Tiffany lunged for the bag, grabbing the handle. I ordered that wine. Give it to me, ma'am. Let go, the driver said, his voice firming up. I cannot give you the product without payment. I will pay. Tiffany shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. Jamal, bring your wallet. Jamal appeared in the hallway looking confused, holding a crab leg. What is going on? Give him your card, Tiffany yelled. Tasha cut mine off. Jamal blinked, looking from me to the driver. He patted his pockets, then looked down, shamefaced. I left my wallet in the suitcase, babe. And you know, I haven't transferred the funds from the business account yet. I laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. The business account. There was no business account. There was only the allowance I gave him. The driver pulled the bag away from Tiffany's grasp. She stumbled forward in her high heels, nearly falling off the porch, catching herself on the railing. I am taking this back, the driver said, backing down the driveway. Have a good night, ladies. He turned and practically ran to his car, throwing the bag in the passenger seat and peeling away from the curb. Tiffany stood there, panting, her chest heaving. Her perfect welcome home moment had turned into a public shaming on the front lawn. She turned to me, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. You beach, she hissed. You petty, jealous bitch. You did that on purpose. You wanted to embarrass me in front of him. I stepped closer to her, invading her personal space until she had to lean back against the pillar. You embarrass yourself, Tiffany, I said quietly. I just stopped financing it. You want to drink expensive wine. You want to live in a luxury condo. You want to fly first class. Then you better get a job, because the Bank of Tasha is closed. Permanently, Tiffany gasped, clutching her chest as if I had physically struck her. You can't do this, she screeched. Loretta, Marcus, she is cutting us off. She is crazy. Loretta appeared in the doorway, wiping butter from her lips with a cloth napkin. What is all this noise? The neighbors are going to call the police. She cut the card. Tiffany wailed, pointing a shaking finger at me. She reported it stolen. The delivery boy took the wine back. She humiliated me. Loretta. Loretta looked at me, her eyes narrowing. Tasha, what is the meaning of this? You know, Tiffany needs her things. Why would you cause scene like this over a credit card? Turn it back on right now. I looked at my mother-in-law, the woman who had criticized my cooking, my clothes, my parenting for a decade, the woman who stole $50,000 from her church. No, I said. Loretta blinked as if I had spoken in a foreign language. Excuse me. I said no, I replied. Walking past Tiffany and stepping back into the foyer, I am not turning it back on, and I am not done. I walked past them back toward the kitchen. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. I felt a surge of power I hadn't felt in years, the power of the person who holds the purse strings and finally decides to pull them tight. Where are you going? Marcus asked, stepping out of the dining room looking terrified. I stopped and looked at him. I am just getting started, Marcus, I said. I hope you enjoyed the crab, because the ride home is going to be a lot less comfortable than the flight here. I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew. He didn't know the extent of it yet, but he knew the dynamic had shifted. The tectonic plates of our family were moving, and he was standing right on the fault line. From the porch, I heard Tiffany sobbing, loud theatrical sobs designed to garner sympathy. "My aura," she wailed. "He ruined my aura." I smiled grimly. Let her cry. She was going to need those tears for what was coming next. Because a declined credit card was a mercy compared to a federal indictment, and I had the paperwork for that sitting in my email outbox ready to fly. The heavy wooden front door slammed shut, cutting off the sound of Tiffany's theatrical sobbing from the porch inside the foyer. The silence was thick and suffocating, like the air before a tornado touches down. Loretta stood by the dining room archway, her hand clutching her chest, her eyes darting between me and the closed door where her favorite daughter-in-law was currently having a meltdown. "You have gone too far, Tasha." Loretta hissed, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief, cutting off a credit card over a misunderstanding. "It is petty. It is beneath you." I ignored her, walking past them into the kitchen where the expensive wine glasses sat empty on the counter, waiting for the bottles that would never be opened. I picked up a dish towel and slowly began to wipe down the granite island, my movements precise and calm. "It was not a misunderstanding, Loretta," I said without looking up. "It was a crime, and I am done financing your crimes." Marcus stood in the hallway shifting his weight from foot to foot. He looked like a trapped animal, his eyes wide and darting, looking for an escape route. Any escape route. He couldn't handle the conflict. He couldn't handle his mother being upset, and he certainly couldn't handle his wife turning into this cold stranger. "We need ice," Marcus blurted out suddenly, his voice too loud in the quiet house. Everyone looked at him. "Ice," he repeated, nodding vigorously as if he had just solved a complex math problem. "The ice bucket is melted. We need ice for the soda, and maybe some mixers. Since the wine isn't happening, we can make cocktails with the vodka in the cabinet. I will go get ice." It was pathetic, really. A desperate attempt to leave the house to get away from the women arguing to find a few minutes of peace in the air-conditioned sanctuary of his car. He wanted to pretend everything was normal, that this was just a dinner party that needed supplies. He grabbed the keys to the Mercedes G-Wagon from the hook by the door. The keys felt heavy. In his hand, a symbol of the power and status he thought he possessed. "I will be right back," he said, flashing a nervous smile at Loretta. "Don't start eating without me." I didn't say a word. I just continued wiping the counter, watching him out of the corner of my eye, knowing exactly what was about to happen. I had pressed the button on my laptop 20 minutes ago. The command had been sent through the satellite network, processed by the leasing company's servers, and beamed down to the GPS unit hidden under the dashboard of the SUV. Marcus opened the front door, stepping out past a still wailing Tiffany. He practically ran down the driveway, his steps light with the relief of escaping. I counted in my head unto 3. I heard the heavy thunk of the G-Wagon's door closing. Solid German engineering sealing him inside his leather-wrapped cocoon. I heard the faint beep of the seatbelt warning. Then silence. There was no roar of the V8 engine coming to life. There was no rumble of exhaust, just the chirping of crickets and Tiffany's sniffling. I stopped wiping the counter and leaned against it, crossing my arms for 5. The front door flew open so hard it banged against the wall, chipping the paint. Marcus stood there, his face flushed, a deep brick-red sweat beading on his forehead. He held the key fob up, shaking it at me as if it were a weapon. "The car won't start," he shouted, his voice cracking. Loretta looked up from where she was comforting Jamal, who was sulking on the stairs. "What do you mean it won't start? It is a brand new car." "Marcus, it is dead," Marcus yelled, marching into the kitchen, slamming the keys onto the island right next to my hand. "Nothing. No lights. No engine. Nothing. Tasha, what did you do to the car?" I looked at the keys, then up at him, my expression bored. "I didn't do anything to the car." "Marcus," I said calmly, "I am standing right here. It says something on the screen. Marcus sputtered, pointing back toward the driveway. It says unauthorized user. It says vehicle immobilized. Contact administrator. I said, nodding slowly. That. Marcus screamed, veins bulging in his neck. What is that? Why is my truck locked down? It is not your truck. Marcus, I said, my voice dropping to a level that forced him to lean in to hear me. It is a company vehicle. It is leased under Williams Forensic Accounting LLC, my company. So what? Marcus demanded. I drive it all the time. You let me drive it. I did. I agreed. I let you drive it. When you were my husband, when you were a partner in this life. But things have changed. Marcus, in the last 6 hours, you have gone from being a husband to being a suspect in a federal investigation. The room went dead silent. Jamal looked up from his phone. Tiffany stopped crying on the porch and peered through the window. Loretta gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. What are you talking about? Marcus whispered, the color draining from his face. I picked up the keys, weighing them in my palm. The car has a remote disable feature, I explained. It is for asset protection, in case of theft or misuse, or in case an employee or associate is involved in criminal activity. Criminal activity, Marcus stammered. I haven't done anything. You abandoned a minor child in a foreign jurisdiction, I said, my voice hard as flint. You conspired to commit wire fraud by using my credit card without authorization. You are currently a person of interest in a child endangerment case. I stepped closer to him, invading his personal space, until I could smell the fear, sweat on him. I cannot allow a company asset to be used by someone who might be a flight risk, I said. The insurance wouldn't cover it. And frankly, I don't want you driving my car to go buy ice while my son is flying home with strangers. Tasha, you are crazy! Marcus shouted, backing away from me, his hands in his hair. You are losing your mind. Unlock the car right now. I need to go to the store. No, I said. Marcus looked at Loretta, seeking help. Mom, tell her. Tell her she can't do this. This is my car. It is not your car. Loretta said, her voice trembling slightly. She was looking at me with a new expression. Fear. She had realized finally that the money, the house, the cars, everything they touched belonged to me, and I was taking it back. It is her car, Marcus, Loretta whispered. She pays the lease. I pay the lease. I pay the insurance. I pay for the gas, I said. And I am revoking your privileges. You want to go to the store? Walk? You want to leave this house? Call an Uber. Oh, wait, you can't because your card is declined. Marcus stared at me, his eyes welling with tears of frustration and impotence. He looked like a child whose favorite toy had been taken away. He reached for the keys on the counter, but I snatched them away, dropping them into my pocket. Don't I warned him? Do not touch me. He froze, his hand hovering in midair. He looked at his brother Jamal, who was staring at the floor. He looked at his mother, who was wringing her hands. This is insane, Marcus muttered, turning away from me, pacing the kitchen floor. You are trapping us here. You are holding us hostage. I am not holding you hostage, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. I am just not financing your escape. There is a difference. You are free to leave anytime you want. The door is unlocked. Start walking. But it is going to rain, Marcus whined, looking out the window at the dark clouds gathering over the city. Then you better get moving, I said, taking a sip of water. It is a long walk to the main road. Tiffany burst into the kitchen, her face streaked with mascara. Tears. You can't do this, she shrieked. You can't leave us here without a car. How are we supposed to get home? How am I supposed to get to my yoga class tomorrow? I laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound. Tiffany, you don't have a home, I said. You have an eviction notice waiting for you. And as for yoga, I suggest you start practicing some deep breathing, because you are going to need it, where you are going. Where we are going, Tiffany asked, her voice trembling. I didn't answer, I just looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 8:45 p.m. The police response time for a priority fraud call in this district was usually under 15 minutes. I had submitted the report 20 minutes ago. Just then a sound cut through the tension in the room. Faint at first, but growing louder rapidly, rising and falling in the humid night air. Whoop, whoop! The wail of a siren. Marcus froze mid-pace. Loretta grabbed the back of a dining chair to steady herself. Tiffany's eyes went wide as saucers. Jamal finally stood up, his face pale. "What is that?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain, peering out into the darkness. Blue and red lights reflected off the wet pavement of the driveway, flashing rhythmically, illuminating the immobilized Mercedes like a crime scene photo. "It sounds like the police," I said, turning back to face them. My face was a mask of calm amidst their panic. "Why are they here?" Loretta asked, her voice shaking. "Why are the police here, Tasha?" Tasha shrugged, smoothing my skirt. "Maybe they are here for the embezzlement," I said, looking at Loretta. "Or the credit card fraud." I looked at Tiffany. "Or the child abandonment." I looked at Marcus. Or maybe I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "Maybe they just want to know why there is a stolen Mercedes in my driveway." "Stolen," Marcus choked out. "I reported it. Unauthorized use." I said, technically borrowing a car without the owner's permission is theft, especially when the borrower has just admitted to a felony. A heavy knock pounded on the front door. Boom, boom, boom! "Police! Open up!" The air in the kitchen was sucked out, leaving a vacuum of pure terror. Tiffany screamed a short, sharp sound. Loretta collapsed into a chair, clutching her chest. Marcus looked at the back door as if contemplating running, but he knew he wouldn't make it past the fence. I looked at them one last time. The golden boy, the matriarch, the entrepreneur, the princess, all of them reduced to trembling cowards by the consequences of their own actions. I walked past, Marcus patting him on the shoulder as I went. "You should probably get the door, babe," I said. "It is rude to keep guests waiting." I walked into the foyer, my head held high. The red and blue lights danced across the walls, painting my house in the colors of justice. I reached for the doorknob, my hand steady. Behind me, I heard Marcus sobbing. I heard Loretta praying. I heard Tiffany hyperventilating. I opened the door. Two officers stood there, grim-faced and serious, rain starting to fall around them behind them. A cruiser sat idling, lights blazing. "Mrs. Williams," one officer asked. "That is me," I said, stepping aside. "Please come in. My family has been expecting you." The flashing lights from the cruiser outside cut through the open doorway, painting the foyer in alternating strobes of red and blue. The two officers stepped inside, shaking the rain from their uniforms, bringing the smell of ozone and wet pavement into my carefully climate-controlled house. They were not the beat cops I had expected. These men wore plain clothes, cheap suits that looked like they had been slept in, and badges clipped to their belts that gleamed under the chandelier light. "Mrs. Williams," the older one asked, looking at me. "I am Tasha Williams," I said, stepping forward. My hands clasped loosely in front of me. I filed the report. "We received the priority flag from the bank fraud division," the detective said, pulling a thick envelope from inside his jacket. "Because of the international nature of the transactions and the amount involved, this has been kicked up to the federal level. We are just here to serve the initial paperwork and secure the subjects so they do not leave the jurisdiction." Secure the subjects. Loretta squeaked from the dining room archway. She was clutching her pearls so hard I thought the string might snap. "Subjects. We are not subjects. We are upstanding citizens. I am the First Lady of Greater Hope Baptist." The detective looked past me, his eyes landing on the huddle of terrified people in my hallway. He didn't seem impressed by Loretta's title or her designer caftan. "Which one is Tiffany Miller and Jamal Williams?" he asked, consulting a notepad. Tiffany let out a small whimper, trying to hide behind Jamal, who looked like he wanted to dissolve into the drywall. "I am Tiffany," she whispered. Her voice, usually so loud and demanding, was thin as paper. "And I am Jamal," my brother-in-law muttered. The detective walked over to them, his heavy boots thudding on the floor. He extended the envelope toward Tiffany. "You are being served with a summons to appear before a federal grand jury regarding an investigation into wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny, involving the unauthorized use of a credit instrument across international borders." He recited the words rolling off his tongue with practiced indifference. "You are also hereby notified that you are considered flight risks. You are to surrender your passports immediately." "Passports!" Tiffany gasped, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped bird. "But I just got it stamped. It was my first trip." "Hand them over," the detective said, holding out his hand. "Now." Jamal fumbled in his pocket, pulling out his passport with shaking hands. He handed it over without a fight. His head hung low, but Tiffany hesitated. She looked at the passport in her purse, clutching it like it was a lifeline. "This is a mistake," she pleaded, looking at the detective with wide, tear-filled eyes, playing the damsel in distress, a role she had perfected over years of manipulating my husband's family. "Tasha gave us permission. She gave us the card. It was a gift. She is just mad because we had a fight." "She is lying. The detective didn't." "Blink, ma'am. The account holder has sworn an affidavit under penalty of perjury that these charges were fraudulent. We have logs showing the card was reported stolen. The airline confirmed the tickets were purchased using the stolen credentials. Unless you have a written authorization from Mrs. Williams, dated prior to the transaction, you are in possession of stolen property. Now the passport." Tiffany looked at me desperate, begging silently for me to stop this to save her one last time. I looked back at her, my face a mask of stone. I didn't say a word. Slowly shaking, Tiffany reached into her bag and handed over the blue booklet. The detective took it, added it to Jamal's, and tucked them both into his pocket. "You are not under arrest at this moment," he said, and I saw a flicker of hope light up in Tiffany's eyes. "But do not leave the city. Do not attempt to contact any financial institutions and get a lawyer. A good one. You are looking at 10 to 20 years in federal prison if convicted." He turned to me, nodded once, and walked back out into the rain, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush bones. "10 years," Jamal whispered. The words hung in the air. A death sentence for a man who couldn't even commit to a 10-month lease. Tiffany started to shake. It started in her hands, then spread to her shoulders until her whole body was vibrating. She turned to me, her face blotchy and red, the mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. "You did this!" she screamed, her voice cracking. The fragility was gone, replaced by a feral, cornered rage. "You called them. You ruined my life over a plane ticket." "I ruined your life?" I asked, stepping closer to her, my voice calm and cold. "You ruined my son's life. You left a child alone in a foreign country because he annoyed you. You stole $15,000 from me to sip champagne while he sat on a plastic chair wondering if his mother was ever coming back. Do not talk to me about ruining lives, Tiffany. You are just finally paying the bill." "I thought you were family," she spat, stepping toward me, her hands balled into fists. "I thought we were sisters. We were never sisters. I said I was your ATM, and you were the glitch. I finally fixed." Something snapped in Tiffany's eyes. It was a terrifying transformation. The mask of the quirky, spiritual, yoga-loving girl melted away, revealing something ugly and ancient beneath. She looked at me, then at Loretta, then at Marcus and Jamal standing uselessly to the side. She looked at us with a sneer that twisted her pretty features into something grotesque. "God, I am so sick of you people," she hissed. The words came out low, venomous. "Excuse me," Loretta asked, stepping forward, her confusion battling with her indignation. You people! Tiffany shouted, throwing her hands up. You are all the same. You think because you have a little money, because you live in this big house and wear these clothes, that you are better than everyone else. But you are not. You are just lucky, lucky Loretta, lucky. Sputtered, I have worked every day of my life. You are loud, you are tacky, and you are exhausting. Tiffany ranted, pacing the foyer, her heels clicking frantically. I tried so hard to fit in with you, to act like I liked your greasy food and your loud church services and your constant drama. But I am done. I am done. Pretending I am done. Acting like I am honored to be part of this family when all you do is drag me down. Jamal reached for her arm. Tiff, baby, calm down. You don't mean that. Don't touch me, Jamal. Tiffany swatted his hand away, looking at him with pure disgust. You are the worst of them all, a loser. A bum who rides his sister-in-law's coattails. I should have married a white man. I should have stayed with my own kind, instead of trying to be some trophy for a wannabe rapper with no talent and no future. The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the foyer. Loretta grabbed the banister, her face going gray beneath her makeup she had spent years putting Tiffany on a pedestal, parading her around the church like a prize, showing everyone how progressive and high status the Williams family was. She had defended Tiffany when the church mothers whispered about her skirt length. She had defended her when she refused to eat the potluck food. She had defended her against me time and time again. And now here was her prize calling her tacky, calling her son a loser, regretting that she had lowered herself to marry into a black family. You ungrateful heifer, Loretta whispered, her hand clutching her chest. I treated you like a daughter. I bought you clothes. I gave you jewelry. I put you before my own flesh and blood. Yeah, and you did it because you wanted a white doll to play with. Tiffany sneered, getting right in Loretta's face. You wanted to show off. You wanted to prove you made it. Well, guess what? Loretta money doesn't buy class. And you people are the definition of low class. You can put on all the silk caftans you want, but you are still just, she stopped. She, herself, just before saying the word that was hanging in the air. The word that was written in the curl of her lip and the hatred in her eyes. She didn't say it, but she didn't have to. We all heard it anyway. I watched Jamal. He looked like he had been shot. He was staring at his wife, the woman he worshipped, the woman he had borrowed and stolen for, as if he had never seen her before. The illusion of his life. His beautiful swirl marriage was dissolving into a puddle of racist sludge right in front of him. And Marcus, my husband, he was looking at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. He had let this woman abuse his son. He had let her dictate his family's choices, and now he was seeing exactly what she thought of him, of his son, of all of us. I felt a strange sense of vindication. It wasn't happiness exactly, but it was the satisfaction of truth finally being laid bare. The rot in the foundation of this family had finally been exposed. Get out, Loretta said, her voice shaking. She pointed a trembling finger at the door. Get out of this house. Tiffany, you are not welcome here. Tiffany laughed, a high manic sound. Oh, I am leaving. Believe me, I am going back to the condo. I am going to pack my things, and I am going to find a lawyer who will sue every single one of you for emotional distress. I will take everything Jamal has. Jamal has nothing, I said, speaking up for the first time since Tiffany's tirade began. Jamal has debt and sneakers, and a wife who just committed a federal hate crime on top of fraud. Tiffany spun on me. You shut up, Tasha. You think you won? You think you are so smart with your little laptop and your police friends? Well, you can keep this trash family. I am going home. She marched toward the door, grabbing her purse, snatching her sunglasses from the table. She put her hand on the doorknob, ready to make her dramatic exit, ready to retreat to the sanctuary. I had provided for her. Tiffany, I called out, my voice cutting through her momentum. She paused, hand on the brass knob, looking back over her shoulder with a sneer. What? I smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, warm and bright and absolutely terrifying. You said you were going home, right? To the condo in Midtown. Yes, she snapped. The condo I live in. The condo that is my legal residence. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and tapped the screen, waking it up. I held it up so she could see the time displayed in bright white numbers, 9:05 p.m. You might want to check your email, I said casually. She frowned, confusion clouding her rage. What? I sent you a notification about an hour ago, I explained. I know you have been busy with the police and the screaming, so you probably missed it. What? Notification, she demanded, turning fully around, her hand dropping from the door. The lease, I said, shrugging. It was a month-to-month agreement, Tiffany. You know that I own the unit. You were a tenant at will. So what? She asked, her voice rising in pitch. So I terminated the tenancy. I said simply, effective immediately, or rather, effective 5 minutes ago at 900 p.m. That is illegal, she screamed. You have to give 30 days notice. You have to evict me. Actually, I don't, I corrected her, walking slowly toward her, enjoying every step. Under Georgia law, when a tenant pays zero rent, or in your case, $1 that you haven't paid in 3 months, they are considered a guest, and a guest can be asked to leave at any time without notice, especially when they have damaged the property or engaged in criminal activity. I paused, letting that sink in. And since you just admitted to federal crimes in front of witnesses, and since I have reports from the building manager about you running an illegal yoga business out of the unit, violating the HOA bylaws, well, I tapped my chin, pretending to think I already called the building security. I told them there is a trespasser in Unit 4B. I told them the former resident has been barred from the premises and that her key fob has been deactivated. Tiffany's face went white. Absolute, stark white. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the sheer terror of homelessness. My stuff, she whispered. My clothes, my jewelry, all sitting in the lobby. I said I hired a moving crew an hour ago. They are very efficient. They packed everything into boxes and left them with the concierge. You have until midnight to pick them up before they put them out on the curb. But where will I go? She stammered, looking at Jamal, who had turned his back on her, looking at Loretta, who was staring at the wall. I checked my watch again. I don't know, Tiffany, I said. But I hear the airport is open 24 hours. Maybe you can catch a flight somewhere? Oh, wait. I pointed to the pocket where the detective had put her passport. You can't fly, can you? The scream she let out was primal, a sound of pure despair, but I didn't flinch. I just opened the door and gestured into the rainy night. Goodbye. Tiffany, I said, don't let the door hit you on the way out. She looked at me, looked at the rain, looked at her ruined life, and then she ran. She ran out into the dark, stumbling in her heels, chasing a future that had just disappeared, leaving nothing but the echo of her own hate behind her. The foyer was silent now, save for the drumming of the rain against the roof, and the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Tiffany was gone, running into the night like a rat fleeing a sinking ship, but the rest of them remained trapped in the wreckage of their own making. Loretta stood by the stairs, her hand clutching the banister, her face a mask of shock and indignation. Jamal was slumped against the wall, looking at the floor, as if he wished it would open up and swallow him whole. And Marcus, my husband, was staring at the front door, his eyes wide and vacant, as if he could still see the ghost of his sister-in-law's betrayal. I walked past them, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, and headed into the living room. The massive flat-screen TV dominated the wall, a black mirror reflecting the chaos of the evening. I picked up the remote and turned it on the screen, glowing blue with the no signal message. What are you doing? Loretta asked, her voice trembling slightly. She followed me into the room, her eyes wary. I am making a call, I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. I tapped the screen, connecting it to the TV via AirPlay. The mirroring icon spun for a second, Then my phone screen appeared on the 65-inch display, crisp and clear. "Who are you calling?" Marcus asked, stepping into the room, his voice hoarse. I didn't answer. I just opened the video call app and tapped the contact labeled Special Agent Davis. The call connected almost instantly. The screen filled with the interior of a luxury jet, beige leather seats, polished wood paneling, and the soft hum of engines in the background. A woman with sharp features and a no-nonsense expression appeared on the screen. She was wearing a dark blazer over a t-shirt, an earpiece in her ear. "Hey, Tasha," she said, her voice clear over the surround sound speakers. "We are about 20 minutes out, just starting our descent." "Hey, Sarah," I said, smiling at the screen. "Is he awake?" "Yeah, he is right here. He is on his third slice of pepperoni." The camera panned to the left and there he was. Leo, my son, was sitting in a plush leather seat that looked too big for him, his legs dangling off the edge. He was holding a slice of pizza in one hand and a juice box in the other. He looked tired, his eyes a little puffy, but he was safe. He was whole. "Hi, Mommy," he said, waving at the camera, a smear of tomato sauce on his cheek. A collective gasp went through the room behind me. It was the sound of air being sucked out of lungs, the sound of reality crashing down on a fantasy world. "Leo," Loretta whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Marcus took a step forward, his face crumbling. "Leo, buddy." Leo looked at the screen, his eyes widening as he saw them behind me in the reflection. "Hi, Daddy," he said, his voice small. "Why did you leave me?" Marcus flinched as if he had been slapped. "I didn't mean to, buddy. We got confused." "You left me at the gate," Leo said, his voice gaining a little strength. "You told me to wait for the lady with the red vest, but she never came. And then I saw you get on the plane. You waved at me." "Daddy, why did you wave? I didn't wave." Marcus choked out, tears streaming down his face. "I was waving at the pilot." "You waved at me," Leo insisted. "And Auntie Tiffany," she laughed. "She told me I was a monster." The room went dead silent again. The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. "Monster," she said. "What?" I asked, my voice ice cold. "She said I was a monster," Leo repeated, sniffing. He looked down at his pizza. "She said I was a little monster, and that monsters don't get to fly on airplanes. She said I had to stay there until I learned how to be human." I turned around slowly to face them. My eyes were burning, but I didn't cry. I didn't let them see me cry. Not now, not ever again. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice quiet, but filling the room. "Did you hear what she called my son?" Loretta looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Jamal stared at his shoes. Marcus just wept, silent, useless tears. "She called him a monster," I said, letting the anger rise in my chest, hot and purifying. "And you let her. You sat there, and you watched her leave him behind, and you did nothing. You let her call your own flesh and blood a monster because it was easier than standing up to her." I didn't hear her say that. Marcus whispered, "I swear, Tasha, if I had heard her." "You knew," I snapped. "You knew how she felt about him. You knew she hated him, and you chose her comfort over his safety. You chose her aura over his life." I turned back to the screen. Leo was watching us, his expression confused and hurt. "It is okay, baby," I said, softening my voice. "You are not a monster. You are a king, and you are coming home to your castle. And guess what? Auntie Tiffany isn't going to be here anymore. She is gone for good." "Where did she go?" Leo asked. "She went to a place where bad people go," I said. "Where people who hurt children go." "Sarah." The agent leaned back into the frame. "We will be on the ground shortly." "Tasha, do you want us to bring him to the house or meet you somewhere else?" "Bring him here," I said. "I want him to see this. I want him to see them leaving." "Copy that. See you soon." The screen went black as the call ended, leaving the room in a heavy, oppressive silence. I turned off the TV and placed the remote on the coffee table. Then I looked at Loretta. She was shaking. Her hands were trembling, her lower lip quivering. She looked old. Suddenly, the vitality and arrogance drained out of her, leaving behind a frightened elderly woman. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew where he was the whole time." "Of course I knew," I said. "Did you think I would just sit here and wait for you to come home and lie to me? Did you think I wouldn't find out?" "You set us up," she accused, her voice rising, gaining a little of its old fire. "You let us come here. You let us eat your food. You let us think everything was fine, just so you could humiliate us." "I didn't set you up, Loretta," I said, walking toward her. "I just let you be yourselves. I let you show me exactly who you are, and you didn't disappoint." "You are evil," she spat, stepping toward me, her hand raised as if she were going to slap me. "You are a vindictive, hateful woman." "Don't," I said, my voice low and dangerous. Loretta froze, her hand hovering in the air. "Don't you dare!" "Touch me," I said, stepping into her space, looking down at her. "If you lay a hand on me, Loretta, I will add assault to the list of charges. And trust me, the police are still in the neighborhood." She lowered her hand slowly, her eyes full of hate. "You think you have won?" she hissed. "You think because you have money, you can do whatever you want." "I don't think I have won," I said. "I think I have survived. And as for the money, yes, it does. Let me do whatever I want. And right now, what I want is for you to get out of my house." "Where am I supposed to go?" she demanded. "My house is being sold. Remember? You sold it out from under me." "It was never your house, Loretta," I reminded her. "It was my house. And yes, it is being sold. The realtors are coming tomorrow at 8 a.m. to stage it, so you might want to go pack." "Pack," she screeched. "Pack tonight. Where am I going to sleep?" "I don't know," I said, shrugging. "Maybe you can stay with Dia Maria." "Oh wait, she is dead." Loretta let out a strangled sound of rage. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door. "Get out of my house. Get out of my life, and take your sons with you." I looked at Marcus and Jamal. "Both of you," I said. "Out." Marcus looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Tasha, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling." "Counseling?" I laughed. "You abandoned our child." "Marcus, there is no counseling for that. There is only divorce. And a restraining order." "Restraining order," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "I am filing it tomorrow. You are a danger to our son. You proved that today. You are not coming near him again. Not without a court order and a supervisor." Marcus sank to his knees, sobbing openly, now burying his face in his hands. It was a pitiful sight. A man realizing he had thrown away the best thing in his life for people who didn't even care about him. "Get up," Loretta snapped, grabbing his shoulder. "Stop crying like a baby. We are leaving. We don't need her. We don't need her charity." She pulled him up. Her strength surprising given her frailty. She looked at me one last time, her eyes cold and hard. "You will regret this, Tasha," she said. "You will be alone, and no amount of money will change that." I smiled. And it was the first genuine smile I had felt all day. "I would rather be alone," I said, "than be with people who make me feel lonely." I walked to the front door and held it open. "Goodbye. Loretta, goodbye. Marcus, goodbye. Jamal." They walked out into the rain, a procession of the damned, Loretta with her head held high, trying to maintain her dignity. Marcus stumbling and weeping. Jamal looking back at the TV as if he could still see the game they were missing. I watched them go. Watched them walk down the driveway into the dark, wet night. They had no car. They had no money. They had no home. They were finally experiencing the world as it really was, without my protection, without my buffer. I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. Then I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and let out a long, shuddering breath. It was over. The parasites were gone. The cancer had been cut out. I was alone in my big, empty house. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. I felt clean. I pushed away from the door and walked back into the living room. I looked at the TV screen, black and silent. I thought about Leo, up in the sky, safe and warm, coming home to me. I had saved him. I had saved us both. And tomorrow, we would start rebuilding. Not a perfect life, not a picture-perfect family, but a real one. A life based on truth and love and safety. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, my hands steady. The house was quiet now, peaceful. The storm outside was raging, but inside it was calm. I was ready for whatever came next. The lawyers, the court dates, the tears, the anger. I could handle it all, because I was a mother and nobody messed with my child. The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of Greater Hope Baptist Church, casting kaleidoscope patterns of red and blue across the pews. It was 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, and the sanctuary was vibrating with the sound of the Hammond B3 organ and the collective swaying of 500 bodies. Loretta stood in the front row right behind the pulpit where the mother's board sat. She was wearing a cream-colored suit with a matching hat that was so wide it had its own zip code. She was clapping her hands, singing "Amazing Grace," her eyes closed, her face turned upward in a display of piety that was so convincing it almost made me sick. She thought she was safe here. This was her kingdom. For 30 years, she had ruled the social hierarchy of this church with an iron fist and a checkbook that wasn't hers. She thought the walls of the church were a fortress that could keep out the reality of what she had done the night before. She thought that because she was the treasurer and the first lady of the Mother's Board, she was untouchable. She thought God was on her side. She was wrong. I stood at the back of the sanctuary, watching her sway, watching her perform. The heavy oak doors had closed behind me, shutting out the heat of the Atlanta morning. I was wearing a sharp white suit, pristine and tailored. A suit that said, "I was here for business, not for forgiveness." I clutched my laptop case in one hand and a USB drive in the other. The ushers, usually vigilant about latecomers, saw me and froze. Deacon Miller, a man whose tax audit I had helped clear up 3 years ago, nodded at me respectfully. He moved to open the velvet rope that separated the vestibule from the nave, expecting me to slip into a back pew. I didn't slip. I walked. I walked down the center aisle, my heels sinking into the plush red carpet, making no sound. The choir was building to a crescendo, the drums kicking in. But as I advanced, people started to notice heads turned. Whispers rippled through the congregation faster than the Holy Spirit. Tasha Williams, the woman who rarely came to service because she was always working, was walking toward the altar with a look on her face that could freeze hell over Loretta. Opened her eyes, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. She saw me, and her clapping faltered. Her hands froze in midair. Her mouth opened slightly, the hymn dying on her lips. She looked at Marcus, who was sitting 2 rows back, his head in his hands. He looked up, saw me, and shrank into his suit, trying to become invisible. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes locked on Loretta. I reached the front of the church just as the song ended. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with anticipation. Pastor Jenkins stood at the pulpit, wiping sweat from his brow with a handkerchief. He smiled when he saw me. A genuine, welcoming smile. He didn't know. He didn't know about the police cars in my driveway last night, or the federal investigation, or the little boy abandoned in Mexico. He only knew me as the quiet, diligent woman who balanced the church books for free, Sister Tasha. Pastor Jenkins boomed, his voice amplified by the microphone. "It is good to see you in the house of the Lord." "Thank you, Pastor," I said, my voice steady, clear, even without a mic. I stepped up onto the platform, standing next to him. I hope you do not mind, but I have a testimony I need to share. It has been heavy on my heart, and I feel the Lord leading me to speak the truth today. The congregation murmured, "Amen," and speak on it. Testimonies were sacred here. You didn't interrupt a testimony. Loretta stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Pastor," she said, her voice shrill, tight with panic. "We are running behind schedule. Maybe Tasha can share next week. We have the announcements and the offering to get to. Let her speak." "Sister Loretta," Pastor Jenkins said gently, waving her down. "The Spirit moves when it moves. Go ahead, Tasha." I stepped behind the pulpit, gripping the sides of the wooden stand. I looked out at the sea of faces, people I had known for 10 years. People who trusted Loretta. People who had given their hard-earned money to this church, believing it was doing good work. I placed my laptop on the pulpit and plugged the HDMI cable into the side. The church had a massive projection screen behind the choir, usually used for hymn lyrics and scripture verses. Right now, it was blank, a white canvas waiting for the truth. I turned to the AV booth in the balcony and nodded. The technician, a teenager named Dante who I had tutored in math, gave me a thumbs up. "Church family," I began, my voice booming through the speakers. "Today, I want to talk about stewardship. I want to talk about the trust we place in our leaders and what happens when that trust is betrayed." Loretta was making a cutting motion across her throat, silently begging me to stop staring at me with eyes that promised murder. But I was beyond her threats. I was beyond fear. "We all know about the Camp Hope Fund," I continued. "The fund we started last year to send 50 underprivileged children from our community to summer camp up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We raised money for months. We sold fish plates. We washed cars. We gave our tithes. Amens rang out from the pews, proud and loud. We raised $50,000, I said. $50,000 to give those babies a week of hiking and swimming and fresh air. But when the time came to pay the deposit 2 weeks ago, we were told there was a delay. We were told there was a banking error." I tapped the spacebar on my laptop. The screen behind me flickered to life. A gasp rippled through the room. It wasn't a scripture verse. It was a bank statement, a high-resolution scan of the Greater Hope Baptist Church discretionary fund. Highlighted in neon yellow was a withdrawal dated 10 days ago. Wire transfer, $50,000, destination offshore holding account, and right below it the return transfer to a personal debit card registered to Loretta Williams. Loretta let out a strangled cry, rushing toward the pulpit. "You turn that off. You turn that off right now. She is lying. She doctored those papers." "Sit down, Loretta," I boomed, my voice echoing with an authority that stopped her in her tracks. I clicked the next slide. It was a collage of receipts and photos. Receipts from the Gucci store in Cancun, receipts from the luxury resort, photos from Loretta's own Facebook page showing her holding a diamond-encrusted handbag, posing on a yacht, drinking crystal champagne. "This is where the camp money went," I said, pointing to the screen. "While you were telling those children the trip was canceled because of logistics, Loretta was spending their tuition on leather goods and first-class upgrades. She stole $50,000 from this church from those children to fund a vacation where she also abandoned my 9-year-old son in a foreign airport." The silence in the room shattered. It was instant chaos. People stood up, shouting, screaming, pointing fingers. A woman in the third row whose son was supposed to go on that trip started crying loudly, wailing, "My baby! She stole from my baby!" Pastor Jenkins looked at the screen, then at Loretta, his face draining of color. "Sister Loretta, is this true?" "It is a lie!" Loretta screamed, her composure completely gone, her hat askew. "She is jealous. She is trying to destroy me. She is the thief. She manages the books. She did this." I clicked the next slide. It was the audit log, the digital fingerprint showing exactly whose login was used to authorize the transfer, showing the IP address of the computer used. It was Loretta's iPad, the one she brought to church every Sunday. This is the forensic audit trail, I said calmly. My job is to find stolen money, and I found it. You authorized the transfer. Loretta, you bypassed the dual signature requirement by forging the pastor's digital key. And I have already submitted this evidence to the district attorney, along with the report on the credit card fraud committed by your daughter-in-law. The congregation was in an uproar. Deacons were moving toward the front, not to protect Loretta, but to block her exit. The Mothers Board. The women who had sat beside her for decades were looking at her with expressions of pure disgust. "You are a devil," a woman shouted from the back. "You are a wolf in sheep's clothing." Loretta looked around wildly, realizing her kingdom had fallen, realizing there was no one left to manipulate. She looked at Marcus, begging him to do something to save her. Marcus sat with his head down, refusing to look up, refusing to be part of her downfall. He was a coward to the end. I unplugged the laptop and closed it. I picked up my bag and stepped down from the pulpit. "I am sorry to disrupt the service," I said to the pastor. "But the truth sets us free, and those children deserve their money back." I walked down the center aisle, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. I didn't look back at the chaos I had unleashed. I didn't look back at Loretta, who was now sobbing, clutching the pastor's robe, begging for mercy. I walked out the double doors into the bright sunlight. Behind me, the sound of the congregation's fury rose like a tidal wave. The shouting, the accusations, the demand for justice. It was the sound of a house of cards collapsing. I walked to my car, my steps light, my heart clear. I had done it. I had exposed the rot. But I wasn't done yet. I checked my watch. It was 11:15 a.m. The police were scheduled to arrive at 11:30. I had timed it perfectly. I sat in my car and waited, watching the church doors, watching for the final act of this tragedy. Because while the court of public opinion had just delivered its verdict, the court of law was about to have its turn. And unlike the church, the law didn't offer forgiveness just because you cried. I sat in my car, the engine idling quietly, the air conditioning humming a soft counterpoint to the storm brewing just 50 yards away, inside the sanctuary of Greater Hope Baptist Church. The digital clock on my dashboard read 11:30 a.m. Exactly. On cue, the wail of sirens cut through the humid Atlanta air, distant at first, then growing louder rapidly, creating a dissonant symphony that shattered the Sunday morning peace. Blue and red lights began to flash against the white clapboard siding of the church, reflecting off the stained glass windows like a chaotic disco ball. I watched as 3 squad cars and 2 unmarked sedans screeched into the parking lot, blocking the exit. Officers spilled out, grim-faced and determined, hands resting on their holsters, not drawing weapons, but clearly ready for resistance. This was not a traffic stop. This was a takedown. I stepped out of my car, smoothing the front of my white suit. I wanted to see this. I needed to see this. The congregation was already spilling out. Of the double doors, a tide of confused and angry people murmuring and pointing, but parting ways as the police marched up the steps. Deacon Miller met them at the threshold, trying to maintain some semblance of order. But the lead detective held up a warrant that cut through the protests like a knife. I walked closer, standing by the large oak tree near the entrance, a silent sentinel witnessing the collapse of an empire I had spent 10 years propping up. Inside, I could hear the commotion. The organ had stopped abruptly, replaced by the booming voice of the detective shouting for order. Then I saw them. The officers were escorting Loretta out. It was a sight that would be burned into the collective memory of this community for generations. Loretta Williams, the self-proclaimed queen of Cascade Heights. The woman who judged everyone from her high horse was being marched out in handcuffs. Her pristine cream suit was rumpled, her hands bound behind her back, but the most striking detail was her hat. That massive architectural Sunday hat, with its feathers and wide brim, was knocked askew, listing to the side like a sinking ship. It was a symbol of her dignity, slipping away, sliding off her head, along with her reputation. She wasn't walking with her usual strut. She was being dragged, her feet stumbling, her face a mask of absolute terror. She spotted me standing by the tree, calm and unmoving. Her eyes widened and she started to scream. Tasha! Tasha, tell them this is a mistake. Call the lawyer. You fix this right now. You ungrateful girl, I am your mother. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I just watched. The detective pushed her forward, guiding her toward the back of the patrol car, as she wailed about her rights and her status and how she knew the mayor. Behind her came the shockwaves. The Mothers Board members were weeping, not for her, but for the shame she had brought upon the house of God. The choir members were whispering furiously, phones out, recording every second of the downfall. The same people who had praised her yesterday were now witnessing her perp walk, capturing it in high definition for the world to see. Then, Marcus burst through the doors. He looked frantic. His tie loosened, his suit jacket flapping open. He was looking around wildly, his eyes darting from the police cars to his mother being shoved into the back seat. He looked like a child lost in a supermarket, terrified and helpless. He saw me. He ran down the steps, nearly tripping over his own feet, pushing past a stunned usher. He ran straight to me, stopping just inches away, his chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. Tasha, oh my God, Tasha, you have to stop this, he gasped, reaching for my hands. I pulled them back, crossing my arms over my chest. They are arresting Mom. They are taking her away. You have to tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you authorized the transfer. You can fix the books, right? You can make it look like a loan. We can pay it back. I stared at him incredulous. Even now, even after everything, he still, thought I existed to clean up their messes. He still thought he could manipulate me into committing a felony to save the woman who had helped him abandon our son. There is no fixing this, Marcus, I said, my voice cutting through his panic like a razor. There is no loan. She stole $50,000 from orphans, and she did it on an iPad that logs every keystroke. The forensic trail is ironclad. I gave it to them myself. Marcus recoiled as if I had struck him. You gave it to them. You called the police on your own mother. She is not my mother, I said coldly. She is a thief and she is an accomplice to child endangerment. And you, Marcus, you are just as guilty. No, babe, listen. He started pleading now, tears welling in his eyes, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. I didn't know about the money. I swear I didn't know. She took it from the church. I just thought she had savings. You didn't know about the money. Just like you didn't know about leaving Leo, I asked, raising an eyebrow. You seem to not know a lot of things, Marcus. For a man who claims to be the head of his household, you are remarkably ignorant of the crimes happening under your nose. It was Tiffany, he blurted out, grasping at straws, throwing anyone he could under the bus to save himself. It was all Tiffany and Mom. They pressured me, Tasha. You know how they are. They said Leo needed to learn a lesson. They said you were spoiling him. I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. I am a victim here too. I laughed, a harsh, dry sound that startled a nearby deacon. A victim? You are a 40-year-old man. Marcus, you sat in first class drinking champagne while your son was alone in a foreign country. You watched your mother buy diamonds with stolen money. You are not a victim. You are a coward. Please, Tasha. He fell to his knees right there on the grass in front of the church, in front of God and everyone. Please don't do this. I love you. We can get past this. I will cut them off. I will never speak to Mom or Tiffany again. Just call the police off. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. We can start over. Just you, me, and Leo. The audacity was breathtaking. He thought he could barter his family for his freedom. He thought he could trade his mother to save his own skin. It was pathetic, and it was the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. I reached into my luxury tote bag, the one I bought with my own money, from my own hard work. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. It wasn't the evidence file that was already with the DA. This was something else, something personal. I looked down at him, kneeling in the dirt, ruining his suit, weeping like a toddler. "Stand up, Marcus," I said, my voice low and commanding. "Have some dignity for once in your life." He stood up slowly, wiping his eyes, hope flickering in his face, thinking I was softening, thinking I was about to offer him a lifeline. "Tasha," he breathed, reaching out again. I slapped the envelope into his chest hard enough to make him stumble back. "You are right about one thing," I said. "We are starting over, but not together." He looked at the envelope confused. "What is this?" "It is a divorce petition," I said. I filed it this morning. Emergency expedited grounds of cruelty, abandonment and criminal negligence. I am seeking full legal and physical custody of Leo. I am seeking the house, the cars, and spousal support for the emotional distress you caused our son." Marcus stared at the envelope, his hands shaking. "Divorce. But Tasha, we have been together for 10 years. You can't just throw that away." "I didn't throw it away," I said. "You did. The moment you got on that plane without our son, you ended this marriage. You made a choice, Marcus, and now you have to live with it." He shook his head, backing away, denial written all over his face. "I won't sign it. I won't let you take my son. I will fight you, Tasha. I will tell the court you are unstable. I will tell them you are vindictive." I smiled. It was the smile of a woman who held every single card in the deck. "Go ahead," I said. "Fight me. But before you do, you should know something else." I pulled my phone out and tapped the screen, bringing up a video file. It was the recording from the airport in Mexico. The one the security team had retrieved from the airport surveillance archives alongside the audio recording I had made in the dining room. "I have a video, Marcus," I said, stepping closer to him, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "I have the video from the gate. It shows Tiffany and Loretta walking away. And it shows you, Marcus. It shows you hesitating, looking back at Leo and then turning around and following them. It shows you checking your watch. It shows you boarding the plane without looking back. Even once." I paused, letting the horror of that sink in. "And I also have the audio recording from the dinner table last night. The one where you admitted it was easier to leave him than to deal with him. The one where you agreed with Tiffany that he was a monster." Marcus went pale, the blood draining from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure. "If you don't sign those papers," I continued, my voice hard as steel, "if you try to fight me for custody, if you try to drag this out, I will release that video and that audio to the public. I will put it on the internet. I will send it to every school board in the state. I will send it to every parent of every child you teach. You will never work with children again, Marcus. You will be a pariah. You will be the man who abandoned his son for a first-class seat. The world will hate you almost as much as I do right now." Marcus stared at me, his eyes wide with terror. He looked at the envelope in his hands, then back at me. He realized then that I wasn't bluffing. He realized that the quiet, compliant wife he thought he had was gone, replaced by a mother who would burn the world to protect her child. "Sign the papers, Marcus," I said, "and maybe I will let you keep a shred of your dignity. Maybe I won't destroy your entire life, just the parts that touch mine." Marcus looked around. The police cars were pulling away, sirens wailing again, carrying his mother to a holding cell. The congregation was watching him, whispering, pointing. He was alone, exposed, defeated. His knees gave out. He collapsed onto the concrete steps of the church, clutching the divorce papers to his chest like a shield. He put his head down and sobbed, a deep, guttural sound of total ruin. I looked down at him one last time. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt light. I turned around and walked away, my heels clicking on the pavement. I walked past the staring church members, past the deacons, past the judgment and the gossip. I walked to my car, got in, and started the engine. As I pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Marcus was still kneeling on the steps. A broken man in a broken family. I didn't look back again. I had a son to pick up, and we had a flight to catch. A real vacation. Just the two of us. The nightmare was over. The reckoning was complete. And I was finally free. 6 months is a long time in the world of finance, but in the world of consequences, it is just the beginning. The ink on my divorce papers has been dry for 3 weeks, and the nameplate on my office door has changed. It no longer says senior associate, it says partner. I stood looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new corner office, watching the Atlanta skyline shimmer in the summer heat. The view was magnificent, a testament to 18-hour days and a refusal to break under pressure. But the view wasn't the most satisfying thing I had seen lately. That honor belonged to the stack of legal updates my lawyer had forwarded to me this morning, detailing the final disposition of the Williams family saga. It turns out that when you pull the thread of a lie, the whole tapestry unravels faster than you can imagine. Loretta's kingdom had fallen first, and it had fallen hard. The forensic audit I provided to the district attorney was bulletproof. She pleaded guilty to embezzlement to avoid a public trial that would have aired even more of her dirty laundry. The judge was not lenient. He saw a woman who stole from charity to buy luxury goods and sentenced her to 5 years of probation with strict house arrest for the first 12 months. She lost the house in Cascade Heights. I sold it 3 months ago to a nice young couple who had no idea about the drama that had unfolded in their dining room. The proceeds went to pay back the church and cover my legal fees. Loretta now lives in a 1-bedroom subsidized apartment on the outskirts of the city, far away from her beloved garden and her high society neighbors. She wears an ankle monitor instead of her diamond anklets. She cannot leave her apartment without permission from her parole officer, which means no church, no brunch, and definitely no trips to Mexico. The church board voted unanimously to remove her, and Pastor Jenkins personally delivered the letter informing her that she was no longer welcome in the congregation she had ruled for 30 years. I heard from a mutual friend that she spends her days watching daytime TV and telling her neighbors that she was framed by a jealous daughter-in-law, but nobody listens to a woman wearing a tracking device. Jamal fared worse. The federal government takes credit card fraud very seriously, especially when it involves crossing international borders. He took a plea deal to avoid a 20-year sentence, but he still got 30 months in a minimum security federal facility. He is currently sitting in a cell in Alabama, learning that his charm and his big ideas about business don't work on cellmates who just want to trade cigarettes. And Tiffany, the woman who started it all, the woman who needed a safe space away from my son, she got exactly what she deserved: total obscurity. The federal charges against her were dropped in exchange for her testimony against Jamal, and a plea to a lesser charge of conspiracy. But the consequences of her lifestyle catching up to her were far more punishing. Without Jamal, without my condo, and without a penny to her name, she was forced to move back to her hometown in rural Georgia. I heard she is living in a trailer park with her mother working the drive-through shift at a fast food joint. Her Instagram account has been deleted. The yoga studio dreams are dead. The designer bags were seized to pay restitution. She is back where she started, bitter, angry, and blaming everyone but herself. And then there is Marcus, my ex-husband, the man who waved at his son from a plane window. He lost everything. The school board fired him the day the news story broke, citing a violation of the morality clause in his contract. No school in the state would hire a teacher who had been implicated in a child abandonment case. He lost his pension, he lost his reputation, and he lost his family. He lives in a studio apartment above a garage, in a neighborhood he used to make fun of. He works for a delivery app, driving a beat-up sedan he bought with the last of his savings. He spends his days delivering food to people who live the life he used to have, smelling the aromas of expensive dinners he can no longer afford. He tried to reach out to me once a month ago. He sent a letter handwritten begging for a second chance, talking about forgiveness and fresh starts. I burned it in the sink without finishing it. I don't harbor hate for him anymore. Hate requires energy, and I have none left to give him. I just feel a profound indifference. He is a stranger to me now, a character in a bad movie I once watched. I turned away from the window and looked at the clock. It was time I grabbed my purse, a new Birkin that I bought for myself not to show off, but because I liked it, and walked out of my office. My assistant smiled as I passed, handing me a folder. The itinerary for your trip, Mrs. Williams? Everything is confirmed. VIP transport is waiting downstairs. Thank you, Jessica, I said, smiling. I will see you in 2 weeks. I took the elevator down to the lobby where Leo was waiting for me. He was sitting on a velvet bench reading a book about aviation, his legs swinging back and forth. He looked taller, healthier, happier. The shadows that had haunted his eyes for weeks after the incident were gone, replaced by the bright spark of curiosity that I loved so much. He had transferred to a private school for gifted children, a place where his ADHD was seen as a difference in processing speed, not a defect. He had friends, he had teachers who adored him, and most importantly, he knew he was safe. Ready for takeoff. Captain, I asked, holding out my hand. Leo jumped up, grinning. Ready, Mom? Are we really going to fly in the pods again? Yes, baby, I said. Lie flat seats all the way to London. We are going to see the world. We walked out to the waiting town car, the driver holding the door open for us. I slid into the cool leather interior, feeling a sense of peace settling over me. We were heading to the airport, the place where my nightmare had begun. But this time, it was the gateway to our freedom. The drive to Hartsfield-Jackson was smooth, lighter than it had been 6 months ago. When we pulled up to the international terminal, I didn't feel the old panic. I felt excitement. We were flying Delta One to London, then Paris, then Rome, a celebration of my promotion and a celebration of our new life. The driver unloaded our bags, sleek Rimowa suitcases that glided effortlessly. We walked through the automatic doors into the bustling terminal. The air smelled of coffee and jet fuel, the scent of possibility. We headed toward the priority check-in lane, bypassing the long lines of economy passengers. I held Leo's hand tight, not out of fear, but out of love. And then I saw him. It was a busy day at the airport, and people were rushing everywhere, dodging luggage carts and saying hurried goodbyes. But standing near the food court, wearing a green vest with a delivery app logo on it, was a man holding a brown paper bag of takeout. He looked tired. His shoulders were slumped. His hair was thinning and his face was lined with the stress of survival. He was looking at his phone, probably checking for his next tip, trying to figure out how to make rent. It was Marcus. He looked up just as we passed. The distance between us was only 20 feet, but it might as well have been an ocean. He froze. The bag of food sagged in his hand. He looked at me, looking radiant in my designer travel wear. He looked at Leo, who was laughing at something I had said, pointing at a plane taking off through the window. I saw the recognition hit him like a physical blow. I saw his mouth open slightly, as if he wanted to call out to say our names. I stopped walking just for a second. I lowered my sunglasses and looked him dead in the eye. He took a half step forward, an instinctive movement toward the life he had thrown away. But then he stopped. He remembered. He remembered the restraining order. He remembered the video file I still had on my phone, the one that could end his remaining shred of freedom. He remembered that he had no power. Here he looked at Leo, his son, the boy he had abandoned, and I saw a flash of agony so raw it almost made me look away almost. But I didn't. I held his gaze, letting him see exactly what he had lost. I let him see the happiness, the wealth, the peace. He saw a woman who didn't need him, a son who didn't miss him, and a future he would never be a part of. He lowered his head, defeated shame radiating off him in waves. He turned away, clutching his delivery bag, retreating into the crowd of strangers, becoming just another faceless man trying to get by. I felt a tug on my hand. Who was that? Mom? Leo asked, looking back. I put my sunglasses back on, adjusting them to hide the lack of tears in my eyes. "Nobody, baby," I said, squeezing his hand. "Just someone I used to know. Come on. The lounge has those cookies you like." We turned away from the past and walked toward the security checkpoint. The officer checked our passports, stamped our boarding passes, and waved us through. We stepped onto the escalator, rising up. Toward the concourse, leaving the ground floor behind, I didn't look back. Not once. As we reached the top, the announcement chimed over the speakers, calling passengers for the flight to London. "That is us," I said. Leo looked up at me, beaming. "I love you, Mom. I love you too." Leo, more than anything. We walked down the jet bridge, hand in hand, ready to take flight. The baggage was gone. The weight was lifted. We were cleared for departure, and the sky was wide open. Tasha's journey reveals a brutal but necessary truth. Your worth is not negotiable, and family is defined by loyalty, not just DNA. For years, she bought their affection, only to realize that you cannot purchase respect from people committed to using you. The moment she stopped financing their lifestyle and started investing in her own peace, she regained her power. True strength lies in setting boundaries and allowing adults to face the consequences of their actions. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your child is to walk away and let the bridge burn. If Tasha's victory satisfied your soul, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice served cold.